Welcome back to my 1937 Austin 7, where we're in the middle of rebuilding the sunroof elements, which have not been on the car since 1965. So you will have seen in part 1 how we got the bottom fabric section of the sunroof complete. It's not yet sealed in, but it's progressed far enough forward. We now need to deal with this hole and rebuild the sliding section. So this is the story of how we rebuilt the sliding section. This is the bare sliding section. I need to look at the runners because although they're riveted at each end, at least one of them has worn and in this case lost its fibre type matting material. The wooden framework is attached to the steelwork with these rivets. They're not normal rivets, and as you can see, the damage has rotted around the outside edge, but inside they're actually bifurcated rivets. So the head goes through the steelwork and then the bifurcated part of the rivet is split into the wood, thus holding the wood down. My rivets, as you can see, are a little bit on the loose side. I've got a number that are a little bit weak, and as a result this whole front deck moves very slightly, but the rest of it's remarkably solid for its age. So I'm drilling a 1/8 hole through the metal and the wood. I'm then putting one of my countersunk 1/8 rivets into the hole. These runners have seen better days and appear to be coated in some sort of bonnet tape with a rivet at each end. I'm heating the end of a nail again to red hot heat to burn a hole clean through the ribbon. So that gives me nice clean holes. I found these very short brass bifurcated rivets in my dad's stock, but they're going to be ideal. So that's the repaired runner. So that's it painted and quite secure. Got a little bit of wood still to replace, but essentially that frame's ready to cover. We're going to have a go at replacing this wooden piece. A, because the end is completely knackered, and B, because it's got a number of fairly deep holes in. The outer screw on this rear seal wasn't able to screw down properly. So I've dug this out and once again it seems to be a bifurcated rivet. Once again I had to carve some wood to fill some of the holes. These were filled, glued and then shaped and smoothed to give me a nice firm surface. So because of the state of this horizontal piece at the back of the hood, my initial idea was to remanufacture it, but it is curved all the way along the surface. I was planning to use a bit of my homegrown ash, but after some consultation, I've decided to cut this here, so we have this decent, nice piece right at the end, and this piece is original. I should cut it in the middle, where this particularly bad hole is, and lose about 1/2 inch. And then again I should cut it here and lose the wasted bit at the end and got the decent bit and move that so that it sits at the end there. That will give me about 5 inches in the middle, which I need to replicate, which should be relatively easy. I can plane it to shape and it won't really show. Plus it reuses Austin's original piece. I am deliberately using a metal saw because I want the fine teeth to cut it, and it's a really delicate little piece of wood and I don't want it to break and rip. Plus it cuts me a really nice straight line. Job done. So that bit with a cutout here will fit that end. Let's rinse and repeat. The centre section was actually made up from a piece of scrap wood from the old sunroof. This was cut on the Hegner saw It was planed to shape and it was glued in. It actually was quite simple to do in the end. So that's this rear lip repaired with a new bit let in and the original all gluing up nicely. The foam will clean off later, I'm not too worried about that. And I've got lots of clamps on it to hold it nice and sturdy and ready. Bearing in mind that the roof isn't fixed down yet, it's been a bit of a nightmare to make fit. It's still a little bit tight along here, but not at the back, and the other side's pretty good. But as it slides open, it's an absolute nightmare to get the material to clear these rails here. And if I don't do that, the material that's wrapped around here will get cut on the rails as it slides open. I think this outer edge needs bending up a bit. It does now move reasonably easily. I put my new ash piece, which I gather is very difficult to actually attach, and I'm going to use some pronged T bolts to go through here with some stainless steel slotted head tops. So it looks like it's screwed on, but it's actually bolted through right onto this top section. The headlining will obviously eventually cover the open area, and in the corner here, this is where the sliding roof mechanism goes. This piece gets screwed to a finisher that goes on here and will sit approximately in that position. This clamp then attaches to it, unlocks the roof in position when you screw the gunnerled knob. But this bit's got to be attached to the roof. There doesn't appear to be a wooden fixing. So I've introduced this piece of stainless steel. And again, I'm going to through T-bolt it at this end, and this bolt will hold it in position there. So it will be locked to the frame nicely. On the top side of here, I'm going to weld 2 or 3 nuts in the right place, and that will allow the mechanism to be affixed to this point, so it's pretty securely attached. So this is the finished arrangement, and the adjustment bar will fit along this edge here. There's a little bit of packing like this to go in between, an edge finisher, and of course the headlining's got to go in here as well. The ash is screwed to the front quite clearly with an original pull chrome on there. That's got to be covered in headlining. This wooden bit that attaches to the front of the sunroof is only screwed into this very thin piece of wood at the top, and I've been told it's A, notoriously difficult to fix, and B, it tends to come adrift. I've gone non-original and I've drilled it to accept a T-nut, and then I've welded that T-nut to the steel outer casing so that it's actually attached directly to the front section of the main frame, and then I'm going to use some stainless steel countersunk screws to attach it. I've also just dot welded these together so that they're a lot more rigid. I've replaced the seal, which will come off again before it gets covered and then goes back on, but that sits on the roof quite nicely. Pleased with that. And the fit along this edge is now pretty good all the way down. Quick coat of paint. I think it's then ready for covering. Hessian was once again put on first, partly for looks and partly to keep the scrim foam separate and less visible. It needed to be cut to size and was tacked in place, but was later glued, as you'll see. I've now glued the outside on, just waiting for it to glue while it dries in the trough there. I'm going to now stick this down properly, and then I'm going to pull the end round, because the end has got to finish on that edge because of the rails. It can't go through to this side. I've cut a cutout to go around the slider. I'm going to tuck this bit under there to seal the end, and then wrap the corner round and make that sit in that dent there, glue that down. I was using some new contact adhesive. All my materials have come from Martrim. The black vinyl is actually proper hooding, and the staple gun I use is a very high quality hard stapler that goes into the material really easily and quickly. I was glad to use this contact adhesive rather than the spray type, as I think it's much better to use. The headlining has also come from Martrim, and is wool, so it's appropriate for the car's age. There's very little tension on this front section, with the only connections to the sunroof being at the outer edges, so I had to tension it quite carefully. It's fitted quite well, but it's very tight to the roof when it's on the car. So here is the completed roof. I've replaced the rear seal. I've got the front all lined up with the holes ready for the piece of ash to go on the front. And as you can see, the black top's all finished. Let's go and fit it to the car. This was the actual very first time I'd ever fitted a sunroof. I've never had a car with the sunroof all the time I've had it. The roof has been a steel sheet. I was somewhat amazed that it slid straight on, despite the fact I'd spent a long time getting the roof to fit nicely. The ash part needed covering in the same wool material, and I did this with some spray glue, and then, as you see, used the stapler to tack it towards the back, and then glued the end round nice and tightly. Works well. Not sure I shall keep it clean. That's an original piece. This is a reproduction piece of ash, but that's covered. Let's put it on the front of the roof. Fitting the ash was quite straightforward in the end. The use of the stainless steel going straight into the T-bolts certainly makes it very secure. I shall have no difficulty pulling on this and feeling quite confidently that the handle won't come off the sunroof at all. So I'm quite glad I used that solution. So with the sunroof fitted, that brings a close to this part of the saga. For the first time since the mid-1960s, this car now has a proper, genuine sliding sunroof. If you've liked what you see, do like and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time, perhaps as we complete the headlining.